Have you ever wanted to be the first to know if aliens really exist? Well, with Nebula, you can be! Nebula is the streaming service that's home to It's Probably Not Aliens, as well as our YouTube channels. And the best part? All of our content goes up early on Nebula. So when we break first contact with ET, you'll be the first to find out. That's right, you'll be able to listen to the next episode of this show before anyone else. Plus, we post bonus content that you won't find any other place. And the best part? By signing up for Nebula at nebula.tv/probablynotaliens, you're directly supporting the show and both of us. So don't wait any longer. Join Nebula today and be the first to know if this time it really is aliens. What is art?
What is it good for? Absolutely everything. It's the opposite of war. War backwards is art, if you think about it. Art is amazing and powerful, and it makes us feel things, and it makes us apparently hallucinate, I think is what we're going to talk about today, kind of. It makes us see things that aren't really there. I mean, that's the thing about art, right? It's, what's that one painting of the pipe where it's like, this is not a pipe, you know, but it says it in French, in France language. And that's what art is. It's powerful in that it can give you these shapes and these colors, and it'll make you see something that isn't actually there. It's just a representation, and it's all in your mind. And so we're going to take all of that, and we're going to, I guess, make fun of some people today, make fun of ancient Egypt while learning about stuff.
It's a pretty amazing thing. Art's amazing. Like, I was just looking at this and I just realized that there is a whole thing of art done by non-humans.
Oh yeah, elephants have done it. I didn't use this in my last video, but I have like archival footage of chimpanzees painting on paintings and stuff like that from way back in the day. People have been doing this forever, and now there's AI art.
Yeah, so now even math equations can attempt art. What I think is interesting about this, though, I'm looking at here, is that if an animal does this, they sometimes give them very cute names. Like, I just saw here that there is a capuchin monkey who made art who they called Pockets Warhol. And a pig that made some abstract expressionist paintings in South Africa who they called Pigcasso.
Oh, that's good. Did you know about the monkey selfie copyright dispute?
I remember hearing about that, yeah. That was like one of the more interesting kind of cats.
Yeah, that was early 2010s. Monkey took a photographer's camera, took a really powerful selfie or a couple of selfies. And then the photographer was like, well, I own this copyright. This is my image. And everyone was like, what? You didn't take the photo, though. The monkey took the photo.
Yeah, although it wasn't like the whole thing that like his art project was to like set up a camera so that the monkeys could very easily take pictures of themselves or something? I
can't remember. I'm trying to see what the actual outcome was of that one, because I think it was settled that they were like, okay, it's you own the copyright, whatever.
I'm looking it up on Wikipedia right now, and the picture is under the Wikimedia Commons public domain, so I think that...
Well, never mind. I don't know then. This is us trying to do our best to do a cold open about art.
Yeah. So I know you're a big fan of art. I know that your first go-to when you go to a new city is usually to find the art museum.
I love an art museum.
You got married in an art museum. You met your first date with your wife was at an art museum.
The same art museum we got married at. Yep. Different order. We didn't get married, then go on our first date. It was the other way around. But yeah.
Chicago, we went to
we went to an art museum in Chicago when you and I were together. We went to the Chicago sort of art museum.
So it's your big thing.
It was massive. We didn't even scratch the surface of it. I felt like we were so lost in like Renaissance paintings, and that's not even my favorite thing to look at. I like the abstract stuff, and we really only touched on that at the end. But yeah, I love an art museum.
So would you be surprised to find out that there are many ancient myths and artworks specifically from many cultures, like cave paintings, inscriptions, hieroglyphics, or artifacts that look like they might be depicting extraterrestrial visitation and advanced technology?
What? Maybe. I mean, How can I trust you, though, Tristan? I would much rather trust an expert like perhaps Dave Childress.
Depictions of flying saucers and what seems to be some kind of ancient spacecraft go back to some of the earliest cave paintings that we know of. Scientists date these cave paintings back to 30,000 BC. And these cave paintings are in Russia, China, Africa, South America, and other areas. And they appear to be some kind of a spacecraft.
Oh.
And I guess that's what we're going to be talking about on this here podcast. This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we look into the TV show Ancient Aliens and some of the things that they spout off their domes and debunk it while teaching you some real world history, philosophy, culture, art, maybe science, sometimes. Look into real life things. But I don't do that. My name is Scott Nice Wonder. I know nothing, but I do grab a bunch of sound bites from David Childress that you will hear over the season because he is funny.
Just keep saying stuff. My name is Tristan Johnson. I'm the one who pretends to know things by high-level Googling.
I love it.
And today we are going to talk about this. See, like the way that this season that we're kind of doing has a structure where we're going to kind of start with almost like the theory, like if you want to look at like the season overall from a structure, the like first couple episodes, the first episode, and there's like another one a little bit later that sort of take multiple aspects of this, like, well, here's our evidence that a lot of stuff is actually like a lot of technology is actually aliens, and we like branch into them into a few examples as we move along.
Yeah, so this is the first episode we're doing really of this season of Ancient Technology. Ancient alien technology.
Exactly.
So where are we starting off? I mean, David Childress made it sound like there's evidence in the past through art and paintings and such like that.
Yeah, so the idea is that the ancient astronaut people, millions around people around the world or whatever, believe that these that various pieces of artwork like cave paintings and such have a depiction or depict aliens or UFOs or whatnot. It's a subject we've covered a few times on this show, but I kind of want to drill down into this concept that art and architecture and such are all these are depictions of alien stuff. And there's a few case studies that we can go into, but that's the sort of major thing that we're going to talk about today is these artifacts, these art things, are they depictions of aliens, or do they maybe have other explanations?
Absolutely. And this is a subject we've touched on a little bit before. We did a couple episodes about Renaissance paintings that had potentially UFOs, flying saucers, and things like that in them. But at least from this episode, it feels like we're going back way further. You know, he mentioned cave paintings and things like that. So this is like way further in the past than I imagine cave paintings came before the Renaissance, if I got my history correct.
A couple years, yeah.
Okay, just a couple years beforehand. So they're like, all right, we know, Tristan, Scott, we know you did the Renaissance paintings, but you haven't touched on all of the paintings in the past, all of the artwork in the past that talks about aliens. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So to kind of break down the claim, as Mr. Childress, self-described, externally described Indiana Jones,
that's right.
Has pointed out that there are cave paintings that date back 20 or even 30,000 years in regions like Russia, China, Africa, and South America that have been interpreted by some people as containing spacecraft or extraterrestrial visitors. And I'll give you a few examples. One that sticks out to this is called The Astronaut of Tassili el-Najir, which are Ajer. I'm sorry, my Arabic is not great, but it's in Algeria.
Okay.
Another example would be the Wandjina petroglyphs in Australia. And if you look, I've got a little expandable here.
You do. Tristan has given me a Notion document that has drop downs. So all of the images are like hidden. So I haven't seen these yet. So I'm going to click on this and I'll give you my first impression. Okay. I'm assuming the Helvetica text is superimposed over it. It's not, that didn't come on the cave paintings.
Yeah. They didn't write on the thing, cave painting.
Cave paintings. Yeah. All right, this first one looks like Mysterio, the Spider-Man villain Mysterio with the globe head. That's what it looks like. It's a couple different people with big globe heads, sort of all standing in a row, maybe like touching each other on the shoulder each, like a line.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it looks. It's like multiple Mysterios. That's sort of his
Yeah.
MO.
They look like people, but their heads are sort of featureless. There's no face. There's no
there's just a big dome head. Yeah, no features or anything like that. The next one is no bodies, similarly spherical heads, but big eyes.
Yeah.
Big eyes.
If only these Algerians and Australians knew each other, they could like, all right, we'll draw the face. You can draw the body.
Yeah, that's what it is. We couldn't draw bodies, but we've got the face details. And then the other people are like, well, we didn't know how to draw faces, but we got the whole body. Team up, we got a person.
Yeah, that's like that's the sort of art. This is what, just so you know, like the sort of standard of evidence we're working with. This is what they claim are aliens.
Gotcha.
Another example would be ancient Sumerian inscriptions that show cylinders and also cylinder seals found in Babylon that claim to show this symbol that shows a disc with wings and people flying in them. And these are often seen as evidence of like flying machines or spaceships or something like that. And I put a link to a little version of one of those.
A little bitty guy. All right. Yeah. All right. This looks like when you go, I don't know if they still do this anymore, but when you go flying for the first time and you're a child and you get your little wings. Did you ever get that?
Like they give you like a little
enamel
pin to say that you were.
They give you a little enamel pin with like wings. I got a couple of those when I was a kid because I always told them it was my first time flying.
I think I remember.
How are they going to check?
I was an unaccompanied minor on airplanes early enough that, like, this is how you know how old I am. Early enough that at one point I was allowed to go into the cockpit of the plane.
Nice.
I don't think they.
You were also allowed to smoke on the plane and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, that's just what it looks like to me. But it's obviously it's not its own standalone. It's like carved into something. Right?
Yeah, it's like carved. It's an inscription or on some seals. Like I think this one was found on seals, which are like oftentimes used in ancient Babylon. Like they would take clay and they would roll it across, and it would sort of make an impression.
It's very cool. The middle looks like it's got like fan blades in it too. Mm-hmm.
Another example of a potential depiction of ancient, technology or flying machines come from Egypt, where we see this.
Of course they do.
Yeah, there's this symbol that shows up in Egypt a bunch of times of what looks like a disc with wings.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very similar to the last one where it's like this big spread out wings, no other bird features, just the wings. And yeah, just a circle in the middle where like the bird, like connecting it where the bird's body would otherwise be.
Exactly. Another case, and this one I think is extremely funny because like when they were like, this is definitely aliens. And I was like, interesting. So it's from the Maya civilization. This was found in Guatemala.
Okay, yes.
And it depicts a man who is what they claim was like a vehicle used by for flying around. Yep. And I want you to enjoy this image.
All right. So they talk specifically about this one in the episode. So here's a fun thing that we're doing this for these new seasons of this show is I am watching the episodes that we're talking about and taking notes and pulling sound clips as you heard earlier. So this gives me more of an opportunity to chime in about what the show Ancient Aliens does. They specifically called out this artifact and spent a good amount of time on it.
This is the clincher.
This is the clincher. This one's going to sell you on it. All right. Think of a turtle, but when the turtle opens its mouth, there's a man's face coming out of it. And it's, I assume made of wood or something or stone. It looks like it's wood because it's got the grooves, but it could be stone. Seeing as how it lasted a long time. Oh, okay. Then who knows? But yeah, it's just like a carving, a statue of basically just a turtle, but the turtle's opening its mouth and a person's face is coming out of the mouth.
Absolutely.
Now here's what I will say about it, because I took notes about this. They spent so much time on this turtle sculpture, and they once again got tripped up on the concept of someone in the past making art.
Yeah.
Because and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but what happens in this episode is they spend so much time talking about like, they know what turtles looked like. They knew what turtles looked like. and yet they have a man's face coming out of this turtle's mouth. So if they wanted to make a turtle, they could have just made a turtle. But no, they made this weird man wearing a turtle suit. It must have been their interpretation, their closest approximation of what they perceived as aliens in spacesuits and things like that. And I'm just like, oh my God.
People
make art. People have had imaginations for so long. I mean, they don't have imagination. I mean, I guess clearly they do have imaginations because they're talking about aliens and whatnot constantly and whatnot. But we've talked about this so much in the show, but I'm just like, I cannot believe that the concept of people in the past making art is lost on them. And they're like, if someone makes a statue or a carving or a painting or what have you, they are documenting
a thing
the present. It is a document that shows it's a nonfiction account of what they are witnessing. And it's like, sometimes people just make art for religious or cultural reasons, or just because they're bored. That's all it is. Anyway, so they spent a lot of time on this turtle sculpture.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things that is the claim. That is the sum total. Like, Ooh. I would say thing looks like a thing in this situation, but the thing doesn't even look too much like that thing. But I still will look at every single one of these. I want to break these down so that we can figure out.
Yeah, I think I got ahead of ourselves. I got ahead of us on the turtle one a little bit. I apologize for that.
But first,
a
season first. Have you ever heard of a product or a service?
I could be persuaded to hearing about one.
All right. Now get this.
Okay. Good stuff.
Whoa. My life has been changed by that thing.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe how much product or service that there is out there. And that's one of them. Or two of them. I don't know.
So we realized very quickly, like when I started to sit down to do this one, that we weren't working with much. This is one of the ones where they were phoning it in, I think, for a lot of these.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of go into a little bit to talk about mainly that when you're looking at all of these different things, these different like examples of, like flying suns or like people like turtle, but human head or people without faces. Like what could these possibly be? And so archaeologists and art historians have been looking at these things for a very, very long time and have broken them down into a couple things that they might be. For example, they might be reflections of spiritual beliefs or visions made by shamans, because these people were not immune to enjoying hallucinogens, for example. And so they might have had hallucinogenic visions, or just like, sort of spiritual visions, or just the one that you kind of pointed out, human expression. So, and then also, to understand what's going on in these pictures, like they all look really convincing out of context. But then if you decide to try to look at what other things exist around these sources and try to really understand what's going on, they seem a lot less out there. Some of these are, though, this is the reason why they're going to cave paintings, is that some of these we don't have a whole lot to work on, because what we know about people who lived 20, 30,000 years ago is not strong. And that some of these times, in some of these situations, these cave paintings might be the only physical remnants we have of like an entire civilization. So like,
oh wow,
it's pretty, but like we can look at other cultures that existed at that time or in similar places and make some educated guesses. And we don't really need to make a 100% case as to what it actually is, but we can at least come to the conclusion that there are some more likely explanations than, again, as I've said a few times on this show already, that all of our concepts of Fermi's paradox and all of the logistical issues of traveling interstellar distances are somehow completely overcome, and that we have had extraterrestrial connections with like extremely thin levels of evidence. Like it's just like there might be some better explanations here.
And if you're new to this show, if you're jumping in on this season, I can't stress enough that Tristan and I are not against the idea that aliens exist. Like it's more so that we just don't know. You know, we're not saying aliens definitely don't exist, but we're just saying a lot of these ancient cases of from the show Ancient Aliens, trying to say that, oh, this was aliens who did this or influenced this or gave these people the technology to do this, what have you. It's not. It's just not.
Yeah.
People are cool. People have done great, cool things for thousands of years.
Yeah. I like by sheer numbers, I assume that alien life does exist in some capacity. It's just more the question of, have they been here? Did they really interact with humans? And if they did they leave behind enough evidence, like actual evidence that would unambiguously point in this direction? And
exactly,
that is sort of the thing that Ancient Aliens tries to do, but it's very unsuccessful. So, for example, the astronaut of Tassili al-Najer is from the...
That's the Globehead?
Yeah, it's a Globehead people.
Ones?
They're
the Mysterio ones?
Yeah, they're under the impression that this was probably a depiction of a spiritual figure or like a shaman or something like that, that has a mix of animal and human characteristics. Which is consistent with many of the shamanistic practices and beliefs in Algeria at this time. This painting that has been nicknamed the Astronaut because of how it looks.
The big globe head.
Yeah, it was discovered in the 1950s, and it is initially interpreted by a French archaeologist by the name of Henri Lot as being an extraterrestrial depiction. He dubbed this figure Jabaren, which he described as the great Martian god.
Okay.
And it's part of a series of Neolithic paintings on rocks that have been found in the area that are characterized by having unusual appearances, a large rounded head and limbs that could be interpreted as wearing a sort of suit or a gear. But later studies and analysis by anthropologists and archaeologists suggest that the figures are more likely to be ritualistic, possibly a ritual of showing a shaman wearing a mask or wearing a costume.
It does feel like a ritual in the painting. It does feel like a ritual, just because people are in a line. They're all like posed in the same way. They're like everyone's like in this line. There's like one person touching someone on their shoulder, and then that person touching another person on their like shoulder or something. So it does feel like there is some sort of coordination going on in this scene.
Exactly. And first of all, the very Scooby-Doo-ass thing where it's like, instead of an alien, it's a mask and a costume.
Yeah.
If it weren't for those darn kids. But the idea of like...
Yeah, have they checked if there's oil in this area and like an angry oil baron or anything like that?
Some type of
that would be my
fraud
first
or something,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that sticks out pretty quickly as like, oh yeah, people in a mask and a costume doing a some sort of ritual with ceremonies, probably because there's other evidence that points in that direction. The other thing too is that Lot, the French archaeologist who suggested it was aliens, have also had his work come under scrutiny because his work was later found to have what I saw is written down as enhancements or alterations of the art, which has led
Photoshop it.
Yeah, so there's been some debate over whether or not the recordings he found were actually accurate or authentic.
Oh my God. You didn't ruin the art, right?
I sincerely hope not. I don't have that evidence on me at the moment.
Because it would be one thing if he took photos of it and then photoshopped those to fit his thing, and then people didn't really go to the location to double check for a while, so he was in scot free for a bit. But if he went in and actually messed with the art,
extremely ancient
that sucks.
painting, yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
That would be
He
one.
should be in jail.
Yeah. Like some of the stuff, like there's similar types of paintings like this that are found in like France and Spain and stuff like that. And like the location of them is not even considered is not public because they don't want people accidentally finding it. Like they don't want people going in and seeing it. Like
Yeah.
there's one cave in France that has like really like old ancient paintings from like early man. And for tourists, they made a replica of the entire cave. So you can go and see that.
That's kind of a fun way to do it.
Yeah, there's actually a cute story because apparently it was discovered by some kids, like some French kids, who then they took it as like their duty to like protect it, and so they like protected it like some sort of like 1980s like kids movie for like years during I think World War II and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Good on you, kids.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that there might be like a little bit of like a backwards thing because you might say like, oh wow, yeah, this does look like aliens and like in like depictions of aliens from like our concept of it from science fiction. The problem though is that there's sort of a cart and horse thing situation, sort of like if you were to say that, man, Tolkien is such a like ripoff of like modern fantasy because like his stuff just has elves and dwarves and like this like, you know, made up like constructed lore universe. And then you have to be like, well, no, he's like, that's the guy who did it, not the other way around.
That he did it first.
Yeah. And that apparently these in the 50s when these paintings went public, this was really like a really big popular story and has been cited as like an influence on a lot of science fiction pop culture related to ancient astronauts, which then sort of gets brought back around to then say like it's like they depicted it in this and then they started making comic books and cartoons and TV shows where aliens look like the paintings, and then in you know the modern day ancient aliens then goes like, look at these ancient things that look just like the things from our science fiction shows. Isn't that weird?
Right, exactly.
Because also aliens when they show up are definitely going to look like the way that we depict them in science fiction.
100%. They're all going to be little creepy little gray dudes, hairless, big eyes. According to when we did the episode about the hills, apparently they're all wearing baseball caps, I think was one of their details. So get on that.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of baseball caps depicted in these cave paintings. So that's weird. That throws me off immediately. I think these are fake.
Means that they predate baseball.
But it's America's pastime, and I'm American, so I don't think much history exists before America.
Yeah. Which is interesting because like I feel like this stuff is old enough that you're borderline like you're coming borderline to the point where like were there even humans in North America at this point? Like that's how old this shit is, right?
There might not be humans, but there was baseball. We will always play ball.
It's like what's it called? All the animals in like what would become America were playing baseball,
playing stickball. Oh yeah,
good stuff. Okay. So then we move on to like the winged discs that were shown in Sumerian art.
Okay.
And like we have studied the shit out of ancient Sumeria and ancient Babylon. We're talking about Sumeria specifically in this one, but this is winged discs show up a lot in Sumerian art because they are well known. The thing is, these people wrote, so we know a lot about what these things mean, and that these were probably symbolic representations of gods or divine beings or mythological concepts. We know this because like the winged disc symbol is shown up. It shows up over and over again in Mesopotamia and has been used over, you know, the sometimes millennia, I believe, to represent concepts of divinity, royalty, and power. So you'll see these literally close to symbols of gods, of kings, of powerful people, and things like that. You see it in Sumerian and Assyrian art, and again, also. The circle symbol seems to be associated with the sun because the sun and the sun god
big
is
circle.
Part of like, yeah, it's associated with their religion, and their religion, the sun plays a large role in what they did.
Huge. I mean, if I was in the past and I had to pick the biggest thing that makes a massive impact on my day-to-day life, it'd probably be the big spherical sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the thing is, so like if you think about it, the wings on the sun depict a few things. It depicts power, but it also depicts and divinity, like they believed it was a god, but also depicts movement
Sure.
because wings are used by birds to move through the sky, and so if you want to depict
Yeah.
something like the sun moving through the sky, like symbolically, then you would draw it
It's
with
got wings.
Yeah,
How else does it move through the sky if it doesn't have wings? But the only thing I know that can move through the sky is birds and bugs, and those have wings.
yeah.
So sun must have wings.
They haven't invented what those lines they put in comics to depict something moving.
Oh, there are technical terms for this. If only I had Mort Walker's lexicon of Kamakana around near me. It's not a Briffit. What is it called? I'll have to look it up. But yeah, motion lines. I'm sure watch me like look it up and it's just called motion lines.
Yeah. Other evidence we can show that this has this sort of symbology is that in Sumerian art, we see often that gods and protective spirits also have wings. We see that many of their gods look like human-like deities that have wings, and like that their divine nature is symbolized by that and their ability to, because it's supposed to symbolize their ability to transverse between the earth and the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
One example.
That's my interruption noise.
Okay.
Sorry. Their feedback on the movement lines, they're called heights, as in HITES.
Mm-hmm.
They're called that because they're the horizontal. That's what the H is. Vertical are called vites. Those are usually reflective surfaces. To show something's reflective, you draw like on the floor, you draw straight down to be like, oh, it's reflecting something. And then you have dites, DITES, which are diagonal lines, which would be like windows, is showing the sort of thing like that. But heights are the ones that horizontal that show things are moving really fast.
There you go. And so this is the ancient Sumerian version of those.
Thank you for indulging me.
No worries. So the idea that like you look at some of the examples from Sumerian mythology, like the Anunnaki, who we've talked about on the show before, who sometimes are depicted as having wings, showing that they're like a powerful deity in Mesopotamia's pantheon. And protective spirits like the Apkallu, which were these sort of sage advisors to the king, are also depicted as having and like even like real people, like important figures and places in history, will have depictions as having wings. So it obviously has some sort of symbolic purpose in this culture to be this idea of, again, closeness with the heavens, royalty, divinity, power, that kind of stuff.
Captain America's got wings on his helmet.
Mm-hmm.
He's close to God.
Yeah. And so, and then so we find these things in like temple reliefs, we find them in like monuments, and again, like they were seen pretty prominent in public and religious life. And that they were probably just like a part of their cultural symbol lexicon that we sort of understand. They seem to also have, because they believe that their king was like a divine, like had a connection to the divine, that these symbols probably reflect on that. And oftentimes,
well, if they reflect, then they would need the vites
yeah,
to show it's a reflective surface.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah, because like they like oftentimes would be depicted as being under the protective embrace of winged deities, and all I can think of when I think of that is like, you know how like in like really sappy, weird Christian right-wing art, you'll have like Donald Trump praying to Jesus and then like an angel with wings protecting them, you know, like those kinds of pictures. Like, that's like the first thing that came to mind for me.
Oh yeah, being wrapped in an angel's wings. I mean, I grew up religious. That was always like a thing, like prayer circles and like praying for like protection, like the angel's wings wrapping around you for protection. Yeah.
Yeah. While we're on the side, while we're on the thing of ancient Sumerians, there's also this image, which is called CLVA 243, sometimes uses depictions of a rocket ship, but it is a depiction of something that's quite not a rocket ship, known as a snake. much more common sight in ancient Sumeria.
Which part of this is supposed to be the rocket ship?
That's the question I had too. I just saw this, and then they were like, it's supposed to be a rocket ship, and I'm like, okay,
we'll try to tweet this out. Yeah, we'll try to tweet this out when the episode goes live. I think it's supposed to be the person. So there's a person sitting on a chair, and it looks like they've got like a staff in front of them, but it could be the snake, because it also has like prongs coming off of it, which maybe is like people see as like controls, like someone sitting in a rocket ship chair and like having these controls, but it's a snake. I don't really know.
Again, but this is like one of those things where this is why this is a common thing that happens with these ancient alien things, is that you look at these images and you can see that it's loaded with symbolism from a culture that existed thousands of years ago, where we don't have the vocabulary to talk about the symbols. Just like in the way that if you were to show like a picture of like a person, if you were to say like 2,000 years in the future, to show a picture of, again, Donald Trump kneeling and praying in front of Jesus with an angel behind him with his wings wrapped around him, like try to they wouldn't understand what that was about either, because you'd have to understand all of the weird symbols and stuff associated with it.
Yeah, they'd be like, who's this guy? Who's this guy, and why is he dressed funny? And it's Donald Trump in his big long tie.
Exactly.
What does the tie represent? And then we'd be like, I don't know, he just has a tie. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I almost like want to like do like an art program where I just study weird right-wing paintings that are usually depictions of conservative politicians and Jesus.
Yeah. I'm trying so hard to find anywhere online where it shows where the spaceship is supposed to be in this image, but I don't quite see it. Oh well.
Yeah, it's VA 243 rocket. Let's see.
Yeah. It's very tricky.
It's very much like it's a lot of when I remember when I was looking this up, I was like looking at all these things and being like, I'm seeing one from Pinterest that says that it's an ancient 3D printer. It's a depiction of an ancient 3D printer.
Oh my God. It's anything you want it to be.
Yeah. I imagine it might have to do with the fact that there's a picture of the sun with some like circles around it. That feels something that they would latch on.
Hey, guess whose Wikipedia came up when I searched for this?
Zechariah Sitchin?
Zechariah Sitchin.
Classic.
Classic.
He always shows up when you're talking about aliens in ancient Sumeria, though, because of the Anunnaki stuff. Egypt. So you saw the round disc with the wings. That's another thing that they say that is an alien, but that is another really, really well-studied part of Egyptian art. It's a symbol of divine protection and royalty as well, specifically around a god of theirs named Ra, who is literally the god of the sun.
All right.
So yeah, like oftentimes like the circle is a representation of the sun. And I mean, these cultures are close enough together that there's probably some like, there's maybe some cross influence, but obviously they could also come to the same conclusion based on the fact that they lived in a place where they were like, this is how you can tell that they were like agricultural, because like the cycles of the sun and stuff like that mean a lot for.
Yeah. Hugely important for agriculture, for knowing how to grow things.
Exactly. But yeah, in the context of Egyptian religion and iconography, these are symbols of power, influence, the divine right. Again, the connection of the person to the sun, or in the sun god. Often,
do you have a green thumb at all? We planted some stuff out in the yard recently, and literally the day after it died, so we felt pretty bad about that.
I am trying. I am really interested in being a gardener. And the problem is that I want to grow vegetables, and my backyard doesn't get a whole lot of sunlight. And also we have a lot of very, very aggressive squirrels. So I'm trying to grow some corn right now. I'm trying to do like a little Three Sisters plot. The corn stalk's not tall enough to plant the beans yet, but some stuff's growing. I'll see if anything actually comes out of it, because I don't know how well it's going to do, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So going to the Guatemalan artifact, this looks like a man, like this is the man in the turtle shell. And this seems to be a mythological scene depicting a lot of stuff that has to do with Mayan beliefs. So it's
I want to come back to this because I got it slightly wrong. I checked my notes again. They weren't saying that it was an alien in a space suit, because it looks like a turtle with a person's head sticking out of the turtle's mouth. And so that would have been my guess. What the show actually did is the editors morphed this sculpture into a flying saucer. So they're saying this turtle with the man's face is actually a flying saucer, which makes, to me, less sense than saying it's an alien in a spacesuit, because it does look like a person wearing a turtle, or at the very least, a person's head coming out of a turtle's mouth. But they're like, no, the overall shape is a flying saucer, and they didn't know how else to communicate it other than to sculpt this turtle with a man's face coming out.
Ancient people famously unable to understand shapes.
They just can't do it. They're like, we have to add turtle elements and man elements to this.
Exactly.
Because I can't get the idea of a
saucer.
of a pretty basic saucer shape.
Yeah. So this artifact is there's several of these, and they're typically found in the northern Petén area of Guatemala, which has places like Tikal and Calakmul, but it's not specified like in what I looked up anyways about what kind of things they are. They're depicted as being codex style, which is very typical of the Maya civilization. Okay. And characterized by this sort of symbolic nature. There's a lot of like random use of symbols and stuff like that. And probably had some sort of function in Maya culture associated, and so like, it's been preserved today, used in Maya things. But I try to find out like what this really means. And what happens is that apparently turtles in Maya cosmology are associated with a god named Powhatan.
All right.
Powhatan.
Sure.
These are one of the 4 deities that are known to be supporting, like, holding up the earth.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of indigenous American creation myths have to do with like the reason why like the North America is sometimes referred to in indigenous circles as Turtle Island is like a lot of indigenous creation myths have to do with the continent being on the back of a massive turtle.
Yeah, there's a whole Pokemon about it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a Pokemon that is a turtle with a tree growing out of its back.
Oh.
I'm sure it's unrelated, but it makes me feel like it's related.
That'll work. So yeah, like that's the idea is that like there's this that this turtle shell symbolizes the world, and the depiction of a man inside a turtle shell could be like a symbol of like the human connection to the cosmos, or this person's role in the creation or the maintenance of the world. So while we don't have like a really good answer as to what this is, there's a lot of like symbols that we know that have to do with the cosmology and religious symbolism of the Maya people, that there's way more logical explanations than this is a depiction of a flying saucer.
Yeah, for sure. Torterra is the Pokemon, and it has a tree and I think some mountains growing out of it. So it is sort of like the whole, it's trying to be like,
that's a big Pokemon,
a little biome. Yeah. I think in the Detective Pikachu movie, they are literally as like big as mountains.
How would you even catch something like that? You'd like pull.
It's a starter. You don't catch it. It's a starter. You get it if you want to.
Whip that out at the Elite Four. You'd like crush everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody, I'm going to bring out this Pokemon. Like, back up. I need like 2 city
I'm going to
blocks.
bring out an entire mountain range.
Yeah.
Please leave the city.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, that's like, blah. It's nothing. So yeah, like I kind of like tried to look into a little bit more about what these things mean. Like, for example, the winged disc in Mesopotamian and Egyptian art is called, at least in Egyptian art, it's called a Horus Behedi. So this is like a symbol of Horus, which is the god associated with the midday sun, or at least this form of Horus, because Horus has changed in his depiction throughout time.
Sure.
But was particularly worshipped in a place called Behed or Edfu, and was a significant place where the cult of Horus was done. Many religious traditions, including Hinduism and the ancient Egyptian gods, are depicted as having various forms. So this is like another one of like the representations of the gods, because gods typically
Sure.
show up in multiple different examples. Horus
Yeah.
Behedi is often depicted as being a disc hovering over a pharaoh during battles, symbolizing like royal protection.
Yeah.
And that includes Horus. The mythology surrounding the Horus Behedi symbol includes his role of being the defender of the solar god Ra from his enemies, who employs the sun's like sort of protective qualities. So again, associated with Horus. So who's Horus? And I drew I got a picture
Horus?
here of him from the game Smite.
I was gonna say, this does not look like a historical document you've put in here.
No.
This is a rad-looking bird soldier, a bird god.
This is from the
basically.
game Smite, which is a sort of like League of Legends, but with ancient gods.
Cool.
I haven't played it in a very, very long time, but Horus is one of the oldest and most significant deities in Egypt, and is a symbol of the sky, the sun, and of divinity, or of like, kings and stuff like that.
And most importantly, is in the public domain.
Yep.
for Smite.
For Smite. I think they're onto Smite 2 at this point. But Horus Behedi specifically represents the sun at its peak. So it's reflecting that like this is the sun at its peak power and its ability to watch over everything and protect everything. So then I was like, okay, that's interesting, because sometimes I see this referred to as the Ra Harakti, which is like not Ra. And so I'm like, why are we seeing Ra and Horus being depicted in the same thing? And this is where we're like, oh, Egypt religion is complicated and weird, because Ra Harakti translates to Ra, who is Horus of the two horizons, which depicts the sun god with Harakti, a form of Horus associated with the horizon. As you can see on the head of Horus here, you have this symbol of the
big sphere.
Yeah. And again, like Ra Harakti is often depicted as having this falcon head with this sun disk emerging as this image of like the sun. And
this guy was in a H-bomb thumbnail, right?
I think that was Sobek, the god, the crocodile god of the river.
You're right. It was Sobek.
Who's the Lord of Seamen, who trying to remember the
very
whole thing.
Similar.
Yeah,
Similar
it's a very good video, because it's like, and every day we anger him with by denying him his sacrifice of mummified crocodiles. It's like, yeah, it's great. But yeah, this is like, what happened is that these symbols got fused together over time, over the like thousands of years that the Egyptian religion existed. And because they both had sort of a symbol of being defenders of order and defenders of the cosmos, they kind of got mashed together, and the Ra Harakti and the Horus Harakti kind of all became one thing. And that's why like this is multiple different things together. And again, because this was like connected with the pharaoh, and the pharaoh was considered to be like the divine ruler, there was sort of this Horus kind of became the symbol, and the Ra Harakti thus became a symbol of the king. And so anything that was like associated with like the king, the pharaoh, would have this symbol on it, because it would say like, this is basically like, this is protected by the king.
So when I went on my first airplane as a kid and I got the wings, I was a god. I felt like one. I'll tell you that much.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more, it makes more sense than the aliens aspect. This then evolved though, because you see this symbol, which is called an Urai, which is the same symbol, but with some cobras added.
Ooh,
which
spicing things up.
Yeah. And the reason is because cobras were also associated with the royal crown. So you can kind of see like how this like religious symbolism started to merge together and became a symbol specifically of like almost to be like a representation of the king and the power of the king. And so you could imagine if you went to like a temple or like a building that the pharaoh had direct control over, you would see like this symbol on it, like you would see like I don't know, like a flag or something like that in more modern days.
Do you have a flag?
Exactly.
It's a famous Eddie Izzard bit.
Yeah. And then again, when you look at like turtles not only show up in like, Mexican mythology, but you see it in multiple different mythologies where people would see a UFO. Like the god Vishnu takes the form of a turtle when he takes the Kurama avatar during a churning of a cosmic ocean that supports the world on his back, as I said. This is and
Torterra.
Yeah, building this the stability of the universe. Chinese myth, there is a turtle that's one of the 4 celestial animals that represents longevity, wisdom, and the north, who is associated with the creation of the world and the separation of the heavens and the. And again, like many Native American cultures, including the Maya, but also the Iroquois and the Lenape, have creation myths that involve a turtle that supports the world on its back. So like context is like key in how this is like. Not only is this
so
like
important.
It's not even like depicting like a turtle shell in such a context is not even like, it doesn't even stick out. It's not even weird in like, this is like a culture that does this uniquely. And so like, it's a very, you're starting to see like a sun with wings being a common symbol because it's a way to depict movement through the sky, which is wings would be a very good symbol of that. And then the sun having such like a powerful role in culture.
Basically controls everything that you do, and it's out of your own control. It is just doing its own thing, and it dictates so much of how you live your life. Including literally surviving. So making a symbol out of it makes a whole lot of sense. And yeah, just the turtle thing. I cannot believe they turned it into they're like, this turtle is a flying saucer, but they didn't know how to depict a flying saucer. So they made a turtle with a man's head sticking out of it. And that's how they could do flying saucer.
Yeah, I think we talked about. I think we talked about this in a different episode, but like, these people were able to abstract things and depict things they saw. So like, honestly, like if you wanted good evidence of ancient alien stuff, if you were just to see if ancient people had seen a UFO and it looked like a flying saucer, they would depict it as such. Like, we don't depict things as flying. Like when we see flying saucers, we don't depict them as airplanes because we've never seen one before and we could only interpret it through an airplane or whatever. We do it through science fiction because we, yeah.
But then even still, you know, we talked about this in our episode we did about the Renaissance paintings. Even still, when there are things that do genuinely to our eyes look like flying saucers, again, it's that context of like, okay, so if we're arguing right now that if they saw a flying saucer, they would just paint a flying saucer. And then someone goes, well, what about these Renaissance paintings that definitely look like flying saucers? And then we go, well, okay, but we also have the context of the flying saucer in sci-fi, you know, lore. And we're throwing out all of the different context that goes around with, you know, the religious symbolism for these, you know, shapes and things like that. So it's complicated. There is no like one size fits all answer. It's just all context, you know?
Yeah. If only somebody had a shirt with that on it somewhere.
Oh, well, I don't sell them anymore. Don't remind me.
But yeah, like the idea is that this reflects a lack of understanding that these people had like symbolic expression, or just that they could do art or have an imagination, or that these could be symbols representing things like divinity or like even the power of the state or anything like that. And again, it's like kind of telling that all of their cases are non-Europeans yet again, of like, these non-Europeans couldn't possibly have had an imagination. So we're going to take this away and move things or lack of credit for all these things.
Yeah, here's the thing. When we talk about scientific stuff on this show, I can absolutely play the part of, you know, devil's advocate for the ancient aliens people, just because I don't know anything really about science. I like to pretend that I do. And when they say fun things about time travel and whatnot, I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. I want to see I hope that they're right about time travel and teleportation and anti-gravity and stuff like that. Cause I'm like, there's no harm really in me just being like, that's a fun technology if it existed. But then when they do stuff like this and they talk about like art and they go after my art, Tristan, they go after my art and they say, oh, people in the past art. What is that? They didn't have art. They had documents, and they were documenting everything exactly as it happened. No one made art in the past. That's when I just get upset, and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
People, like, I cannot believe they don't give anyone the benefit of the doubt of being like, people in the past were able to have imaginations. Come on.
Yeah. And
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think it also talks, like, as we talked about when we talked about Renaissance painting, that all art is in conversation with other pieces. And so when we see these depictions, we have to realize that they're going to look alien because they are from a very different time where all of their cultural symbols and ideas are different from ours. And so you can't just like look at it and be like, well, that looks like a spaceship. I mean, you have to be like, this is why art historians exist, because you have to understand
Yes.
the past on its and what kind of language, like visual language, they were using to show things.
I mean, sometimes entire cultures, sometimes just very specific artists, like what their, what their frame of mind is when creating that sort of stuff. And it makes it really, really tricky. But I suspect you have a final thing you'd want to go over.
Yeah.
Or did we already
touch
about
there's one last thing, which is just that also this is...
Well, hold on. All right. Hit me with it. The part where Tristan makes you sad.
Yeah. So the two things that stick out to me about this story is, one, this is a strict undermining of the people who dedicate their lives and do a lot of hard work to understand these things in the context that they were made in. Again, they're just taking a lazy look at the superficial aspects of it and then saying it looks like a thing from a sci-fi movie, so therefore it is. But that is, again, like, they could have consulted an expert. They could have, and in doing this, they're going to convince a bunch of people that it is one thing and completely like overwrite all this work done by all these, like, experts in the field that have been working on it for ages. And further, and I mean, this show actively disparages archaeologists and the field of history anyway. So that's not a big surprise. The other thing too is that these are valuable parts of heritage for a lot of indigenous people. Like we sometimes look at these things being like, oh, look how weird this different thing is. And it's like, Maya people do exist, and these things are like part of their history and their religion and their background that you're just sort of taking a quick glance at and then saying it's X, which feels like it's like cheapening and dismissing their own sort of identity of themselves.
Yeah.
And so let's not do that.
Let's not do that. I agree. I honestly think that could be a tagline for whenever we talk about ancient aliens, which is all the time. Just say, hey, let's not do that. Whatever they're recommending, whatever they're sort of saying, hey, let's not do that.
Yeah. But that is that's sort of the gist of this little art history lesson today.
So that's ancient art.
Yeah.
We've talked about Renaissance paintings. Now we talked about ancient art.
Yeah, next week we're going to go to Jericho.
Next week we're going to Jericho. And I get to play some Veggie Tales.
You do. You definitely do.
All right. But until then, Tristan, if people want to follow along with the show, they can do so at Probs Not Aliens on Twitter and Blue Sky. They can also follow us for our non-podcast related stuff. You have a YouTube channel called Step Back. You doing anything over there?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel called Step Back where I talk about history and the present and why we need to like understand the past to make the world make sense. And so I'm currently working on a video about how the entire economy is sort of changing forms with like private capital or private equity and the sort of cannibalizing or stripping of the economy for parts.
So really light stuff over there.
Really light stuff. Scott, if I want to learn about whether or not a candle can give you a migraine, where would I go for that?
That's a good question. I have a very specific candle in mind for that one. And that's a video that I made with my lovely wife, Emily, where we smelled a whole bunch of Scooby-Doo candles. It was fun? ? question mark? That's on my YouTube channel, NerdSync, NERDSYNC. I've got a bunch of other cool videos coming out. Hopefully, I know I teased forever ago, like, oh, Harlem Globetrotters video. It's still in the works. It's became so long. I'm doing a million other things right now. But
I'm impressed by how good
check
they
that
are
out.
at math. I just recently saw an episode where they solved an entire body switching issue.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I don't remember, and I would make another joke about it, but I don't remember much else from that episode of Futurama. But yes, they're a part of it. You can follow us, support the show at nebula.tv/probably-not-aliens, but we also launched a Patreon. So if you want to support the show directly, you can do so there. We would love to make enough so that we can pay someone to edit the show, because Tristan and I are both very busy and not. We're both in a financial area where we can't really afford to spend frivolous time on this show, but we love doing this show. So thank you to everyone who listens and supports. And again, that's Probs Not Aliens, or patreon.com/Probs Not Aliens. You can also write reviews of this show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. That helps a lot. And it's free if you don't have any money right now. No worries. Write a review. Tell your friends. If you've already written a review, tell your friends about the show. It means a lot to us when you do that. And a great place to send them is probsnotaliens.com. It's got links to everywhere where you can listen to the show and all the other links that we talked about here. Nebula, Patreon, all that good stuff. But that's it.
Yep.
So until next time, my name is Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson, and the truth is out there. Depiction of a river where 60% of it is diverging into one direction and 40% is diverging in the other, to determine that the water is probably going in a different direction. That's my symbol for the concept of probably.
It's probably going in a different direction. That makes sense. Oh gosh, that was. I get steamed up when we talk about art because I'm very much like, I love art so much. Stop annoying me with your bad art takes, Ancient Aliens.